Mother. For those of you who don't know, this is Daya. She is my mother.
I had a vision where Krishna actually appeared to me. And he said, that son of yours is mine.
I mean, life is orchestrated by God and Guru. Sometimes they need to push you because you won't push yourself. Because I've never found in myself resistance to following an instruction or guidance from Guruji in of itself. The resistance has always been when the price to pay in order to follow that instruction was something that was dear to me or something that I'm attached to. I'm here getting slandered on my own podcast by my mother, little nerd.
And you were cool. You know, it was cool.
It's too late now. Don't backtrack now from little nerd to cool. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev, Swami.
Mother. For those of you who don't know, this is Daya. She is my mother. And it's a privilege to have you here on the podcast. I think it's funny. A lot of people have been asking me for a long time, you know, Swamiji, when are you going to have a woman on your podcast? And, you know, I'm going to, by the way. I also have, you know, women guests in the pipeline. But then this came about and we had a conversation and this became obviously a natural solution. And I was like, yeah, of course, my mom, that's the easy solution to that. So I'm really happy you're here. Obviously, we would have a lot that we could talk about.
For sure.
Having spent many years together, obviously. So rather than that, though, let's talk about you and your journey, your path, how you came to be where you are now. And then, of course, there'll be some overlap with my life and how you see my own journey into all of that I've become. And so I think that will be plenty for us to talk about. Mother, without further ado, how did your spiritual journey begin?
Yes, it actually started when I was very, very small. I already had a lot of memories, actually, of my past lives. And I didn't realize, of course, that this was something odd or something unusual. So as a small child, when people ask me questions, you know, oh, what's your name? Where do you come from? This kind of thing. I would just say very naturally what I remembered. And this went on for quite a while until one day I noticed that people were looking at me in an odd way, you know. What is she saying, this odd child, you know? And I was very sensitive. I didn't feel that I belonged, you know, somehow.
Where was this at this time?
This was in Brazil. I was born in Brazil. And maybe because I had that feeling, maybe because my parents separated when I was, you know, just over a year old. And I went to live with my mother's parents. And funnily enough, recently I realized that they had actually quite a big influence in my spiritual path, you know, and how I became as an adult. Because when I went to live with them, my grandfather particularly was a very religious man, actually. But even though you could say he was a traditional Catholic, you know, and he read the Bible and he could read it, he knew it back to front and all this kind of thing. He also was a little bit different because actually he was an extremely positive person. And he never allowed anybody to say anything negative. Nobody was allowed to say anything bad or negative about anybody. He always encouraged everybody to be very positive. And he had tremendous faith. I mean, his faith was really unshakable. I remember one occasion, I was already an adult, but he was mugged in front of the cathedral where he used to go and sing in the choir. He was actually His love was music. He was a musician. And he was mugged by some young guys. And as soon as they had done it, they actually had some kind of realization, and they said, "Oh, no, uncle, no, sorry," and they gave it all back to him. And it was that kind of for him, he thought that was absolutely normal because of his faith, that God would always protect him, and really he did. And he was the kind of person who, if he saw somebody homeless or a beggar in the street, he would invite him home. My grandmother used to sometimes, not find
not be the biggest fan.
No, not the biggest fan, because he would bring somebody home to eat. Yeah. So she would, feed the person and this kind of thing. And they were actually, they weren't wealthy in any way. They were very modest, but he always insisted on doing that, bringing people to feed and help and so on. And that attitude, I think, at the time I didn't realize it, but had an influence on me, on my behavior generally, and how I thought about things, spirituality. And as I said, when people started looking at me oddly, what happened was that I began to shut down, to close off, because I realized that maybe what was natural to me was not so normal for most people. And so I didn't talk about things anymore. And as I grew, I distanced myself quite a bit from my spirituality for quite some time. When I married your dad, he's somebody who didn't believe in anything and, was very matter of fact about everything. And I kind of went into that for a bit, But then after quite a few years, being married, I suddenly started having some experiences that I couldn't explain. Yeah. And these experiences, they affected me very deeply because they were, they were very strange, but they were very strong. I began to have visions and things started coming back, memories and all sorts of things that I could no longer deny, even if I wanted to. In the beginning, I thought, oh my goodness, am I going crazy? This is...
Sure.
Because I felt very lonely in that situation, not being able to share, with the people around me. But then I accepted it. And once I accepted it, all these things happening, it felt natural to me. And I started to look for some kind of channel, some kind of path, some kind of thing that I could identify with.
I mean, I think it's worth mentioning also that when you say, for example, that, my father was more of a matter-of-fact person or something like this, I think it goes a bit beyond that. I mean, I think, as you said, you could not share it with anybody because I think, as I know my father, or as I knew my father, somebody who was pretty much against. Yeah. It wasn't so much that it's not my thing, it's that he's actively against these things.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. And, once I started seeking something, which was this period, I started actively seeking things. I started reading a lot of books on spirituality. I remember I was in London for a while, so I went to the Mind, Body, Spirit Festival, which used to exist. And that actually was a huge revelation for me. Because I remember going, signing up for a workshop of some kind. And I went into the room and there were literally hundreds of people in there. And the presenter said, started to share her own journey to that point. and saying, oh, in the beginning, it's a very lonely journey. It's a very lonely thing. And actually, we're not alone. And I remember observing the people around me, and they were very diverse in age, gender, and also how they dressed and so on. There were business people, obviously, in suits and things. And they were, very casual or more hippie types and all this kind of thing. And they were all nodding, when they said, when she said, oh, it's a very lonely path, these people were all nodding and agreeing. And suddenly I realized that I wasn't alone and I wasn't crazy, that there were at least more crazy people around.
You found your tribe.
I found my tribe. And
this was still when you were with my dad? Or after?
Yes, I was still there.
Okay.
But I wasn't able to share this with him because that's the thing, that you mentioned. I wasn't trying to indoctrinate anybody. I wasn't trying to convince him of anything. Not at all. I just wanted to be able to do my thing, But he didn't accept it. He was very anti, the whole thing. But I kept going, doing various things. In the beginning, I experienced things which were more comfortable for me because obviously I had this from past experiences, life experience. So I did courses in shamanism and, past lives, all this kind of stuff. And Reiki, everything.
Spirituality starter kit.
Yeah, starter kit, right? But funnily enough, whenever I did something like that, I realized it kind of felt like something I knew. It felt comfortable, let's put it that way. But it didn't feel right for this time, I didn't feel that this was what I was meant to be doing or, seeking. And then my brother, who was also seeking a lot and reading a lot and so on, he had been initiated into a lineage of Kriya Yoga. And he talked to me about it. And I became interested. But I only went into it after actually a situation that happened in the family, which was... I was actually, from the age of 8, I was brought up by my mother and my stepfather. He was British, and so I grew up actually in London. And later, I went to live in Portugal because he had bought a property there in the 70s, and we used to go on holiday. We enjoyed it very much. We had a big organic fruit farm, and we lived there, right? You were born there, and so on.
Sure.
And at a certain period at this time of this seeking, I had been having some challenges within our relationship, with your dad, and so we had moved. In an attempt to maybe save the relationship and so on. And during that period, my stepfather suddenly died. One day, just boom, gone, He hadn't been sick or anything. And
this is when we were living back in Brazil.
Yes, we were living there for a little while. Yeah. And I got the news, that one day he got up, he was happy, he was fine. He left to go to the town. He liked to sell his avocados, and he had a heart attack, and that was it.
Yeah, I remember.
And it was a very shocking experience for me because I considered him to be my father, in fact, because once my parents, divorced, I hardly had any contact with my father's family. So he had brought me up from the age of 8. So for me, he was very important. And so I went to Portugal. He was in Portugal, so I went to Portugal to help, help my mother and around, help my brother and so on with this. And then when they told me how he had died, it was just, I thought to myself, wow, I knew he had some frustrations of things he hadn't been able to achieve, he hadn't been able to actually do just for himself, things that he wanted to do just for pleasure. And one day he just fell dead. And he wasn't, he was only like 77 or something. So that really shocked me, and it made me think a lot, about how my life was going, and how generally how we live, and how we think that we'll live until whatever age we're really old and we have time and all this kind of thing. But sometimes maybe we don't.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So then that's when I decided to actually really change my life and prioritize things. Yeah. So I sat down and I began to prioritize. And for me, it was very important to prioritize my values, which were, that I had found within the spirituality, which was truth and sincerity with myself and, with my children, you and your sister. You were small, and, I had really tried, mainly because of this situation of having children. But I realized that, overall it wouldn't be the best, maybe, to stay in that situation. And especially because when I had been pregnant with you specifically, I had a very, for me, a very important experience, which I had not been able to share at the time with anybody, which was also unusual, because at that time, when I was pregnant with you, I had no connection to Hinduism at that time, And when I was pregnant, one day I had a vision, a very strong vision, where Krishna actually appeared to me. And I saw this I recognized, I had seen, of course, books, and I'd seen, the image of Krishna, but as I said, I had no connection. So I saw Krishna, and it was definitely Krishna, from the color of skin and how he was dressed and so on. And he said that he pointed to my pregnant tummy, and he said, that boy, and that was the other thing, I didn't know the sex of my child at that time. And he said, that son of yours is mine, and you'll have to give him to me at some point. And I agreed. I said yes, straight away. It felt right. Also because, you see, I have actually never felt that my children were my possession. That's not how I see my role. I've never seen it that way. For me, I was the vehicle, if you like, who brought my children in here to this world. But my role was to help them to become self-sufficient and to reach their highest potential, as much as I could help them. Yeah.
Did your part, Mom.
So I've always, that I've always gone with whatever, you wanted, whatever your sisters and so on, whatever is, as long as it's positive, of course,
like life choices.
Choices and so on. Yeah. That's, for me, why not? It's great. So anyway,
Did you ever talk to Guruji about that?
About what happened when I was pregnant? Yeah, I've talked to him a few times about the various strange experiences, well, I suppose, experiences I've had. And he has actually always kind of confirmed, these things. And I suppose because up until now, all this whole life has been a mix of risk-taking on my part. I've always been somebody very open to things, to not limiting myself, either with material things, businesses or whatever. I ran many businesses, or moving country, since...
That part I know a lot.
You do, don't you? Yes, yes. People are always astounded because since I was born, I've moved 37 times,
Yeah.
And of
I
course...
participated in, 4, 5, 6 of those. I don't know, not even that many. I'm just a small portion of those moves.
Small portion, right? And sometimes they were within the same country, sometimes from country to country, Yeah. But of course, in the last, almost 18 years now, it's been serving Guruji. We met him together.
We did.
The whole family, actually.
We did.
It was a wonderful experience, an unexpected one.
But we're making a jump here. This is a timeline
jump. This is a huge jump.
Let's go. You were at the your stepfather having passed away, right? And what that impact it had on you.
Yes, it had a huge impact.
Right.
I changed my life. Your priorities I had my priorities, and I chose to separate, right, from your dad.
Yeah, I was 7 at the time.
Yes, you were something like that. And that was a concern for me, obviously, because you had a good relationship with him, and so did your sister.
For sure, I had a good relationship with my dad.
And I wanted that to continue, for you and your sister. And so, as you remember, probably I spoke to you and to her separately because, you had different age. She was an adolescent, 16-year-old, and you were, 7 going on to 8. Yeah. And so, different understandings, right? Sure. So I spoke individually. And actually, I was very surprised by the reaction I got. It was unexpected for me how both of you reacted. In a good way. I realized that I had actually underestimated both of you. Your ability to understand my situation in this, our relationship. You both were extremely supportive and understanding, even though in your case, of course, you would have preferred that your parents were together, but you were very clear that if it was better for me, that it was fine for you, I should do it. And that's what what happened. And of course, after that, I was like 3.5 years on my own. That's what I wanted. And it was an amazing time. It was amazing. Because then all these things that I had been holding back, I just, went for it. So that's when I read everything I could get my hands on, And I went on pilgrimages. I then became, I went with my brother to be initiated into that Kriya lineage. And I went on Babaji pilgrimages to India, all sorts of pilgrimages, all sorts of travels. You came also on one of them. And it was an amazing time. And I felt that I grew a lot. I really developed during that time. I felt very free. And then after...
We had moved back to Portugal.
Yes, we moved back to Portugal.
After
you
guys
and your sister, when we split, we moved back to Portugal. Yeah. And as usual, I opened another business, that was my thing. And so in between the India trips, I was still running the businesses, doing that. And then after 3.5 years, I came back. I was running had a health shop, and I was running a business in a kind of esoteric-y type center as well in town. And then one day, that's when I met Ram. I met your stepdad. And that was unexpected. And well, it happened quite quick, the whole thing, and then we married and so on. But when I then got pregnant, no, with your youngest sister, and that was a surprise because of my age, I had thought that actually I wasn't able to have more children, and I had said, And then
you were 45? How old were you when you had her?
I was 47.
47.
Yes.
Yeah.
So so I wasn't expecting that, no. So I was pregnant, and at the same time that I discovered I was pregnant, I discovered that I had cancer.
Yeah, I remember. Of course, I wanted to ask you about that as well, but
yeah.
I mean, how was that? I mean, obviously more from the angle of, I was there, obviously, but from the angle of your spiritual life and just somehow how to overcome something like that.
Yeah, well,
mentally and just emotionally, the whole thing.
Sure. It was a shock, of course, because it was a serious, it was skin cancer, but it was a malignant melanoma that had developed very quickly on my leg. And I had to have a biopsy, and it took quite a long time to get the result because it was near Christmas and New Year, this kind of thing. So I had been quite anxious, anxiously awaiting the results. When the results came in, the tumor was actually much deeper than the dermatologist had hoped for. In the meantime, I had also discovered I was pregnant, so again, the obstetrician and the dermatologist in particular was not happy about it, was very concerned, because when you're pregnant, your hormones change, and that can accelerate cancer, you see. So there was all this going on, and although in the beginning I was a little anxious to find out the actual result, once it came, I kind of relaxed a bit. And also because I was, I've meditated since I was 17. That I used to do all the time, no?
I remember mornings when we would wake up on a weekend off of school or whatever, and you would be there and you'd meditate, and then you would sometimes invite me to meditate with you as well. And
yes.
I would just sit there and close my eyes and like attempting, some to clear my mind and feel nice things.
Yeah.
But I absolutely have memories of
yes,
of you
I remember
meditating.
teaching you to meditate when you were 5 and so on.
Remember you taught me the Gayatri mantra,
yes,
actually.
I did.
So
yes.
I knew the Gayatri mantra off by heart, and I was meditating.
Yes.
When I was relatively young.
Yes, it was from the age of 5. I taught you when you were 5. That's right.
Yeah.
And
I remember that.
So the meditation really helped.
Not that I was very good at it, but anyway, go on.
The meditation, really helped me. And I realized that I had to take responsibility for that, for my own cancer. This is my own thing, other people, well. But for myself, it was important because I realized that in many ways I had created it over a very long period of time through frustration. Yeah, emotional.
You really felt that? Like this was a result of all of that?
Yes, I did. And actually, Guruji confirmed it to me later. Yeah. I asked him once about it, and he said yes.
It was the result of your mental state?
Yes, my mental state.
The things you had kept inside?
Yes, everything that I had kept inside,
Tip to everyone, don't hold things inside.
Yeah. Over that period, of my marriage and everything.
Right.
So anyway, I was meditating, and I had an operation. I had 2 actually. First, they removed the first part with local anesthetic because I was pregnant, and it turned out to be much deeper. So then I had to have a second surgery with a surgeon this time who, was going to dig deeper and remove the other tissue and so on and so forth. And after that operation, I wasn't supposed to move. So I was supposed to, stay quiet and all this kind of thing. So I wasn't able, by then, I had been initiated into this other Kriya, no?
Yeah.
And I had been to India many times, and I had a very, very strong connection to Babaji, to Mahavatar Babaji. And so when I couldn't move, I would do it mentally. I did my yoga mentally. And I meditated. And I took ownership of my part in my illness. Yeah. And, well, I'm still here, When the second result came in after the other surgery, it was clear they had managed to remove the rest of the cancerous tissue. And then the dermatologist asked me to promise to go every second month because they couldn't. You see, ideally they should have done some tests which would have shown the direction in which the tumor was traveling. But
right.
Because I was pregnant, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't do any of the treatments, any of the things, right? So she promised, she said, look, you've got to promise that you'll come regularly. I won't even be able to remove any moles or anything from you, but I need to check, just to make sure. And it was an interesting process, the whole pregnancy, because the more I could feel the baby grow inside of me, life growing inside of me, it was like a kind of, who's going to get there first? Death, life or death, what's going to be the result? But the more she grew...
That's quite sinister sort of process.
It was, it was, but it taught me actually a lot, that experience. And the more she grew inside of me, the more I felt that actually life was winning, that life was going to be the result. And she was born the day after my birthday.
Huh? I don't know.
And my 40th.
It's great for me. My sister and my mother have a birthday one day apart. I can remember it.
Exactly. And, and that day, I remember feeling when the day she was born, that it was a kind of rebirth for me, The old me had gone the day before, and now this was the new me. And it was a very, very positive, overall very positive experience, because I believe that in every experience, whatever experience that we consider, whether we consider it positive or negative, there's always something you can learn, always something positive that you can get, even from what you might consider a negative experience. So it wasn't easy. That period, of course, mainly because people would look at me with a lot of pity, and people say, "Oh, I heard you're dying," and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
So you have to kind of take that with a smile, and But your stepdad Ram was amazing. He really supported me during that period, and we got through it. It was an important spiritual step, really, for me to actually realize my part in this whole thing, and take responsibility for that, and then work through it, and see it through in a positive way, on my path. And then once, your sister was just over one, no? She was 13 months. We went to live in India.
We did. I love how it's just so casual. And then we just went to live in India, That's the logical next step, as you do with a 1-year-old child.
Actually, yes, that was funny because people were like, "Oh my God, how can you possibly do that?"
Including me, by the way.
You as well, yeah.
I had some resistance to it.
How can you do that? Take a 1-year-old to live in India?
That wasn't my concern.
No, not your concern. No, that wasn't your concern. And I was laughing because I was saying to people, listen, there are loads of children there, yeah? And they're perfectly fine. So what difference does it make, Why would she not be okay? And it was a great experience. And she was fine, all the time. Sure. And, so we went because I had been told I needed to go there. I remember actually being reluctant at the time because I had a business now. When I was told, look, you have to go and live in India, you have to stay there, and something's going to happen that's important for you, and so on. And I remember arguing and saying, you
were told like spiritually.
Yes, spiritually. And and I was saying, but does it have to be in India? Can't it happen here? Why do I have? Because I was told like sell everything and go, And I was like, really? Can't it happen here? Do I have to sell everything? Do I have to take my whole family?
It requires a heck of a lot of trust, to listen to something like that. Because I'm sure, look, in different situations, people will have maybe some inner conflict, that there's some parts of them that are telling them one thing, or they feel another thing, and they may even feel like that's coming from outside of themselves. Like it is some divine sort of guidance or some kind of push, in one direction or not. But to then follow it through in a radical way like that, which is, okay, well, look, we have a family, 1-year-old, we're stable in a sense here in Portugal.
Yeah.
Let's just turn this all upside down and go to India with no real concrete solutions or plans waiting for us there.
Yeah. And
faith, trust,
yes.
craziness, mixture of all.
I think probably a mixture, but funnily enough, ordinarily, if somebody actually had come to me and said, look, this is what I'm going to do, I would probably have talked them out of it. I would probably say, sure, you're being sensible, this kind of thing. Because actually I'm a very grounded person, even though, I have all these experiences and things.
Well, it must be challenging, I think, for someone to be grounded, but then to have, as you were saying earlier, like, if you just start having visions, or you start having experiences or memories or things coming to you that you're not necessarily chasing,
right?
But those things come to you to a point where you even maybe want to deny them, or you want to not go through that, but it comes to a point where it becomes undeniable. I think it's an interesting dilemma almost, because there's a part of you, I suppose, I'm asking you in a sense, that may question how grounded you remain after doing something like that, or once you give in to that kind of side of things and say, yes, okay, not only do I believe in this, not only do I accept this, but I'm going to allow this to guide my decisions in life.
Yeah.
Not only for me, but for my entire family and for the people that are dependent on me.
Yeah. It's a big responsibility. It was it didn't come, the decision wasn't easy for me. It didn't come lightly. It wasn't something that I took just, let's move, let's go, it is quite a challenge when you have to have this trust. And when I'm certain about something, who is giving me the message, then I actually do trust. And that was the case. And so I was willing to actually, after some argument, I didn't just say, I must admit, I didn't quite surrender,
that's okay.
and say, I said, well, is it really necessary? Can't this, whatever it is, happen here? Do I have to? No, you really do, for various reasons. And, so I accepted it. And actually, my admiration, my respect was actually to all of you, because that you trusted me, and to the extent.
Well, you are my mom.
Yes, but still,
you haven't given me reason not to trust you. But look at it this way. Also, I think there's a part of me that looks at something like that and goes, I understand what that looks like now, right? After the almost 18 years of following Guruji.
Yeah.
Because I feel like sometimes one thing is to just generally accept being guided by higher wisdom.
Yeah.
When you recognize that someone simply understands the world, understands you better than you understand yourself. And when they tell you to do things or advise you to do things, there is not much in me that stands in opposition to that. It's just a natural thing where, sure, if somebody's just more experienced, more intelligent, more wise, whatever it may be, there's not really any rational opposition to following that type of thing.
Yeah.
But the issue isn't so much in following wisdom. The issue is, what am I having to pay in order to follow that wisdom? What's the cost? Because I've never found in myself resistance to following an instruction or guidance from Guruji in of itself. The resistance has always been when the price to pay in order to follow that instruction was something that was dear to me or something that I'm attached to or whatever it may be. That's where I have always felt the greatest amount of resistance. And it's like an obedience of convenience.
Yeah.
It's a surrender of convenience.
Yeah.
Like I'll surrender as long as your instruction is convenient, and compatible with my own wishes. And I've always joked about this when I teach. I'm like,
yes, yes.
You're not exemplifying tremendous surrender when Guruji looks at you and says, I would like to take you all around the world, traveling with me, preaching the glories of God. And you go, of course, I'll accept. Humbly, I accept this terrible, task that you have given to me. It's like, no, it's lovely. It's beautiful. It's exciting.
Yes.
Anybody would do that.
Yes.
Right? It's the stuff that's not compatible with your own ambitions and your own wishes that really tests you. And the point I'm coming to is, I wonder, and I'm curious to hear what you think about this. God, Guru, life. I mean, life is orchestrated by God and Guru. Sometimes they need to push you because you won't push yourself. Yeah. Sometimes they need to place you in a new environment, in a new situation, in a new challenge, because as much as you may be doing okay in the one you're in, you are wasting time, or you are wasting life and potential, and you need to be placed out of your comfort zone. And that's a very different type of thing. Because from my experience, those moments are not spoken to you. It's not the Guruji walks up to me and says, I'm going to now take you out of your comfort zone and put you into this situation. No. It's more like, I'm just going to push you without warning. Yeah. And I'm going to need you to deal with it, right? But I'm only going to push you without warning because we've already established the relationship that permits me to push you without warning, in a sense. Yes. In a sense, we've established that you are open to this. You want this. Now, my question to you is, at that time, when said instruction came and you felt, compelled to do it, was it something that you, looking back, feel needed to happen? Or is it something that you may even have, in a sense, opened yourself up to or asked for or not? I'm curious.
I think it needed to happen, and I'm always very open in that sense. I mean, if it's God, if it's a being I really trust, then I just do it. It's just how it is. If I've been pushed, thrown off cliffs, pushed, whatever, to a lot of new situations, different challenging situations. And for sure I was open to it, yes, willing, participant, if you like.
But did you feel like you were in a comfort zone in Portugal? I mean, you just battled cancer and you just given birth. You have a 1-year-old. I mean, it doesn't sound like the most, the biggest comfort zone of all time, but...
No, but because I had been through a few years now of prioritizing things and understanding, maybe having a better understanding of how life can be taken away, suddenly without expecting it, how we waste so much time, no? Because of this idea that, we have so much time, that we can stay, that we can do whatever.
I mean, the reason I ask is just because I think it's nice to use these examples of these situations to try to understand a bit more about how God works with us.
Yeah.
And why sometimes we are pushed to do the things that we are, and why God guides us in a particular direction sometimes. And I think, to take you out of your situation that you were in, having just overcome that, and is a bold move. And I like to just somehow try to pick at the thoughts and processes just to see.
I think it was, a lot of it was to do with, does this correspond to how I want to live my life, to what's important for not just me, but also for my my family, right? You know, when I started a business when I was in my early 20s, and the reason I did it was to improve the quality of life of my family. But instead, I worked all the time. Yeah, I worked 14-hour days, whatever. I didn't have a proper holiday for 7 years, and so on. And I worked and worked and worked. And I missed, because I worked so much, I missed a lot of moments, of experiences of you, of my children, you know, that kind of situation. So I really felt that I had come to a point in my life where I didn't want to repeat that. I wanted to live life in a different way, make different choices, better choices. Obviously, what I had tried before hadn't worked, you know, in a sense that it hadn't really, in truth, improved the quality of life of my family because I had been missing a lot of the time. And I had that myself in my own family history. And I knew how that had impacted me, and I didn't want that same impact, you know, on future generations, on you. So I made different choices, and because I had full trust, in what I was asked to do, I spoke to you all about it. No? I didn't just take a decision and say, okay, no, I spoke to you all and explained the situation. And that's why I say I have great admiration and respect for you all, because you all trusted in that enough to go along with it. Okay, you were a child.
That's it. I think you underestimate how little maneuvering space I had as a 12-year-old to say, no, Mom,
no, still,
you go to India.
Yes.
I'm staying by myself in Portugal because I'm independent, right?
No, but I mean, okay, look, fair enough.
You're right that I agree, but I think, remembering from my side at least, the sentiment at that time was not that it was going to be a terrible, terrible thing, but that my preference would have been to stay in Portugal for friendships, for lifestyle, for course. My own aspirations in football and different things.
Things, yeah. And but nevertheless, you know.
Yeah, sure. I think you always taught me in a way to be very flexible. I think you being the way you were at a time when I started to have, you know, stronger memories, like, you know, from the age of maybe 5, 6, 7 onwards, right? Yes. I think your that coincided with your 2-3 years of that freedom and sort of adaptability and whatever else. And I feel like our whole family in that sense was quite adaptable. And I never felt myself sort of attached or rigid. And I definitely put that down to just the collective upbringing that I had.
Yeah. Well, I think also maybe it's in our genes because, you know, I come from a family of immigrants, you know, people who moved around a lot, actually, all over Europe, Northern Africa, you know, went across the ocean to Brazil, you know, this kind of thing. So we are, in a way, we're travelers, we're people who find that normal and comfortable, you know. And so we went to India. And in a way, I think you flourished there in many respects because the school that you went to, you really enjoyed, and it brought out a lot of the abilities that you had, which you weren't always able to show
I ended up staying there the longest.
And you ended up staying there the longest, exactly.
Spoiler, you guys left after how long? Like
just over a year, and you stayed for 2.5. Yeah.
Boarding school.
Yeah. And that was another thing for me, which was a surprise because if somebody had said to me, oh, would you ever put one of your children into boarding school? I would have said, no, never, you know, this kind of thing. Because I had the experience of my brother, you know, who'd been to boarding school in England and all that kind of thing. And I was basically against it. But then in India, it was very different. And you were very adamant that you wanted that particular school. You were, you know, and you enjoyed it because it challenged you for the first time. no, because you were extremely bright and you were always quite bored at the other schools. You didn't have the motivation. This place challenged you because everybody else were also little nerds, no?
Excuse me? Yes.
So
there were a lot of intelligent people.
They were
in
intelligent
that
people.
Yeah,
Yes,
bright
they were very
people.
bright, talented, and they were, So it was suddenly you found yourself among peers.
I'm here getting slandered on my own podcast by my mother, little nerd.
And you were cool. It was cool.
It's too late now. Don't backtrack now from little nerd to cool.
No, but you were cool. It was cool to be intelligent. It was cool to know these things. And so you felt for the first time that actually you could, really be who you were.
No, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. Yeah. Actually,
yeah.
The thing I look back on the most is, ironically, I didn't discover my Hinduism or spirituality there.
No.
I had more of a spiritual experience of India before we moved, when we were doing those trips.
Yes, those trips. Yeah.
But what it did do is that it normalized a lot of it. So I became very just comfortable with Indian culture, with India, with Hindus around me all the time. The language, just the way of being, and it's not played an insignificant role in my then life that followed, and what I am today and everything. I think all of that just made it so much more palatable and so much easier to transition into.
Exactly. And, it was somewhere, actually, India was always somewhere, a country where we felt very comfortable. For me, it's always been home. I fit in very well. And I really enjoy going there. It's a very special place for me.
I remember that different moments when we would talk and you would always tell me like India feels like home to you, like India is really home.
Yes.
Is it still like that?
Yes, it's still like that.
I tell you, to this day, I don't have a country that feels like home to me. And it's not in the sense of like, I'm a global citizen. No, it's that I have affection for certain countries, for sure, more than others. And I have history in countries and whatever. But there's no country, there's no place, there's no hometown, there's nowhere where I look and I go, that's my country, that's my home, that's my hometown. Yeah. Sri Pittanila is my home, but it's not a country.
No, it is in a way.
Inside,
it's a country inside a country. No, but actually, when I say I feel it's home, I feel I have more than one home. That's the other thing as well. Right. You get to the point where there are many homes.
I could be very spiritual now, just say, because my true home is Vaikuntha.
Sri Pittanila is my home. I lived here for a while, and I still consider it my home. When we come down the road and I begin to see it. You spent time living here.
How long did you live here?
We lived here for just over 2 years, but we used to come regularly after that. And it's whenever we come, when we drive and we begin to see the landscape and the building, it's like, oh, I'm home. Yeah, even now, after all these years.
Your guru's home should be your home.
Yeah,
so
and India is my home, and of course I have huge affection for Portugal because, we had
so many years there.
So many years. We had great time there. My kids, you were born there. There's a lot of affinity and connection, and England too, because I grew up there.
Sure.
So
normal.
It's normal. It's all normal, and
we were
in India. And we had many experiences, but in the beginning it was all very normal. I mean, there wasn't anything that jumped out particularly. And I remember that after several months, I admit that I began to kind of think, no lightning has struck. And I was maybe a little bit more concerned, but more for you rather than myself. And then, then something actually very significant for me personally happened out of the blue one day, because it brought back abilities, if you like, or gifts that I used to have as a very small child. that were very natural to me. And again, it happened again. They came back. And I was actually really grateful, very, very grateful to God. I remember saying, Lord, if this is just the one time, I'm truly grateful and I feel truly blessed, and it's fine, But it stayed. And so it changed again how I lived my life, because it made it possible for me to serve by helping other people, maybe, trying to help them. And then after we left India, we had to leave India, unfortunately, for reasons of work and so on. Ram got a job in England, so we went back to the UK and to live there.
Well, I was going to say,
I say back because,
back for you,
for me,
yeah.
And he had also lived there before, worked in hotels and things.
True.
So we went there.
The 3 of you went?
Yes, and 3 of us. Also
4. My
older sister. Also,
4.
She had been in Australia, and then she joined us. She joined us in India.
And I stayed in India, boarding
and you
school.
Stayed. And you would come for your holidays.
Of course, yeah.
You came on your holidays.
Yeah.
And so we were living there, and then eventually you joined us. And then once again at the school that you went to, there were a lot of Indians, right?
Well, it's just in the UK in general.
It's UK,
There's lots of
right?
Indians in the UK in general.
The UK.
Yeah.
So again, it was a very normal situation for you. You made lots of friends. You were very comfortable.
But the thing is that by the time I went to school in the UK, we'd already met Guruji, because we met him the summer of that year.
Yes.
It was during the summer holidays.
Yes. What happened was that at the time, there was a big clinic, the Hale Clinic in London, which had over 80 or 100 therapists working there in complementary medicine. And somebody, I can't remember who it was, had given the owner my number because of the therapy that I did, and she wanted to speak to me. With a possibility of going to treat people at her clinic. And we were living in Buckinghamshire. We were not in London. But so she called me and we made an appointment. And because your older sister, had actually done a whole course in Ayurvedic treatments, massage and so on while we were in India, she also went with me. So we went, and I remember that the owner was waiting for us in a small room, and she had a book and a key ring on the desk. And when I approached the desk with your sister, we noticed at the very same time that the book that was on the desk was about Mahavatar Babaji. And incredibly, it was from the lineage that I had been initiated to, which was quite an unusual one. It was not, ones that most people know. And also the key ring was Babaji. So I blurted out, your sister kind of nudged me, and I blurted out, "Oh, Babaji." And she was surprised because at that time, not so many people knew about Mahavatar Babaji. And she said, "Oh, Babaji." And I said, well, I explained and so on. My connection had, the initiation and so on. And she said, "Oh, well, that's very interesting because my spiritual master, my guru, will be coming in a couple of weeks. And I'm arranging private interviews, for free. If you'd like to come, you're very welcome." And so I thought, oh, why not? I wasn't actually looking for a guru. To be honest, for me, my guru was Mahavatar Babaji. But she said free. That was interesting. I thought, oh, why not? And he was a direct disciple, she said. That interested me. So I said, "Oh, yes, please. I was very interested." So she wrote it down and so on. We went home.
And this was, of course, Swami Karuna.
Yes.
Teresa Hale, after
Teresa
whom the
Hale,
Hale clinic
yes.
was named.
She was not Swamini then.
No.
She was Teresa Hale.
Of course.
And so we went home. And when we got home, actually it was a time when my mother and my brother were visiting us, no, if you remember. And so I told you all about what had happened,
yes,
and the
did.
coincidence and this and that, and about this interview. So then you all wanted to come.
Yep.
So I called her again. I called Teresa Hale and I said, listen, is there a problem? It's not just me now. We're 7. And she said, oh, no, that's fine. No problem. So then we went. No?
It was me, you, Ram, sisters.
Yes.
Peter, Uncle
Yes.
Peter,
And your grandma.
my grandmother.
Yes.
Correct. Yes.
And we walked into a room. He was in one of the small rooms. He was sitting, I don't know if you remember, in a corner.
I don't.
And there were chairs.
Meeting my guru.
There were chairs in front of him that had been placed in front of him, and Ram and I sat in front of him, and everybody else around, And the first thing I remember that impressed me in particular was his loving energy, no? The beautiful smile and really loving energy.
That's what I most remember from that meeting, his smile.
Yeah. And I sat down in front of him. And then the second thing that impressed me a great deal was that he said, what can I do for you? Now, while I was in India many, many times, I had visited many ashrams and many masters, and I had great respect for many of them. I never thought any of them as my guru, but I had respect and I would visit. And the one thing that I had noticed was that generally speaking, it was what we could do for the master rather than the other way around. So when he said that, what can I do for you? That touched me a great deal. And then the loving way in which he asked, how can I help you? Why are you here? What would you like to know? And, he was going from one to one, every single person. And then as I sat there looking at him, suddenly something very unexpected happened. No? Many have heard this story, but I had a vision. And that vision was very clear. And it was of him. And he had been my guru before in a very old life. So I recognized him. It was a recognition. And I kept quiet. And he went around, talked to everybody and so on. And then at the end, we got up to leave. And he asked, then he turned to me and to Ram and said, would you please come back in after everybody has, left? So we came back in. And he asked me if I was going to the darshan the following day. I didn't even know that there was going to be one.
Right.
But I answered straight away. And I said, yes, I'll go. And he said, good. Then I will reactivate your guru mantra. He said, the same one you had before. You know which it is. And I said, yes, I do. And so I realized at that moment that he had recognized me also. So the next day, that's what happened. And and I've been here ever since with him. And it's
the end.
The end. No, and it's been an amazing, amazing journey. No? He has certainly been a very, I can't emphasize how important role he's played in our lives, all of us. No? For myself, Atma Kriya Yoga has been amazing. I became a teacher together with you. You were also in the same group.
True.
And then later, not long after actually, he made me a trainer, a teacher trainer, and told me to go and give a teacher training in Brazil. And I've never looked back. And it's such a grace and such a blessing to serve in that way, because I remember the very first time that I was initiated into Atma Kriya Yoga. It was actually the first or second public course that was given to the public,
It wasn't the first, but
I think it was the second public course. And I remember, I had come from another lineage, and all Kriya is good, But when I learned Atma Kriya Yoga, it was as if somebody had switched on the light. And I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. I could see what had happened, that they had condensed, all the most important things, all the kriyas, and everything was now one pointed, and I was no longer on the country lane. I was now on the motorway, and it felt amazing that we were being given this and allowed to actually develop in this way, and to but in such a simple way. It was so clever. It was so amazing, and yet I could feel the layers underneath the surface, what was going on. And it just, it brought me so much joy. I was so happy, and then being a teacher was such a huge grace, and then a teacher trainer, and something that is such a joy for me to be able to support teachers and to train them, but also to then later on to support them. I have also that role. Every time, that I talk about it, it just makes me so happy, and to share it, with teachers, and to talk about it, and to clear things, because sometimes people underestimate it because it looks so simple. It seems so simple, but it's so profound. It's amazing, I tell you,
Where would you say, because obviously you led a spiritual life before meeting Guruji. We talked about, following guidance of the divine, and really having deep experiences, profound experiences that really oriented your life. What did you feel is the biggest difference after not only just meeting him, but when you really started to see him as your guru, and you really started to see yourself as his devotee, and really make that whole thing solidified? What was the biggest difference, do you feel, from your spirituality before to your spirituality after?
To put into words is maybe, for me, maybe not so easy. I will try. Because it means everything. It was about coming home to myself, to my true self. I recognized him. And not just as a previous guru, but who he is, really. And also my relationship with who he is, because I remember. And so it's been such a huge blessing that he found me, that he allowed me to be on this journey, this lifetime, with him here. It's really been how can I put it? The cherry on the cake, I trust him 100%. I always have done. I don't doubt. There is no absolutely none in me in relation to Guruji. And he knows that what he asks, what he guides, I follow and I do. Because even when I don't understand, and believe me, most of the time, we never know why, a particular thing, I know absolutely 100% that he has my best interest at heart. Mm-hmm. And that's all he wants for every single one of us. Yeah. So why would I choose something else? Why would I, doubt that? Why would I not do it because it's inconvenient, It's, for me, it's not about that. It's not about my attachments to things or places, actually. Well, places, that I'm able to detach from. No? I've had to do that so many times, that it's been a very good lesson in detachment. No? When you have to, you move countries, sometimes you can't take the things that you like. You have to give away, sell, throw out, whatever, So it's a very good lesson. And yeah, my children live in different places, different countries, no? Except for the youngest. No, she's still with us, but probably not for much longer. And I have that faith that all of you, wherever you are, that you're on on the path that you've chosen, because I never forced any of you to follow.
No, I mean, I got initiated, when I was relatively young, 17, and then if you remember, when I became brahmachari, on his birthday,
I remember
the day before, we called you to sort of,
yes,
we made a point of that, that you would come,
yes,
to see it,
yes,
and to be part of it,
yes.
And there was a sort of race against time for you to make it there,
yes,
in time for the initiation.
I remember my flight, I think, got delayed. There was some problem. And I remember I was like praying and thinking, oh, am I going to make it? Am I going to make it? And in the end, I arrived, and it was in Stephanshof, and I arrived, I think, 10 minutes before, and I was like, oh, I made it. And it was so emotional for me when it happened, when you were, initiated, because at that moment, I felt that I had fulfilled my role. And I remember thinking, okay, Lord, there he is. I've done it. It's,
He's your problem now.
Yeah, now you deal with him, Yeah, no, it was a very happy moment for me.
But it was like, I remember it, of course, for my own reasons, but also just because of Guruji's almost insistence that you should be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like this feeling of maybe closing that cycle, as you said, and that you had to be there in a sense for the handover process, as symbolic as that would be. Obviously I'd taken that decision for myself, and
and also because of what had happened before.
Exactly, that's what I mean.
Yeah. I had so I really felt that was accomplished, and that gave me a very huge sense of release, also, in a way.
What was your? I mean, I'm well aware how I felt about my own life with Guruji in the early years. But if you remember, there was that time in the UK when, for a while, he was, we were never really well off at any point of our, life at that, and it was not that it was a problem, but just that we were never well off.
Yeah.
And I remember there was an incident that happened in my life when I was 16, going over to 17, where it similarly shook me into thinking that maybe life isn't so predictable and that things aren't to be taken for granted, and made me reprioritize. I relate to what you said in a sense about putting your priorities straight and figuring out things, right? And I had really made it clear to myself that I wanted to be around him as much as possible. I wanted to be around that environment as much as possible. I wanted to be, I had school, I had commitments.
Yeah.
I couldn't avoid, and I didn't necessarily want to avoid them. I was fine with it, but Guruji, this whole thing had to be a big part of it. And there was that time when he basically, for a good period of time, essentially paid for me to go see him.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't afford to.
Yeah.
But I had told him, I really want to be in the ashram. I really want to be around you guys. And for a while, every time he said, come whenever you want, and then I will cover the tickets. I will cover the costs, in a sense. And I mean, how was it for you during all that process? I mean, up until when I finished school, after I finished school, eventually I just went to the ashram, and obviously I've been here ever since.
Yeah. Look, as I said, I've never seen any of you as my possession. Irrespective of that experience I had, when I was pregnant. So I trusted in your choices, for yourself. Because they were good. They were positive choices. They were good choices. That experience you had was a very tough one. It was a very hard experience, also for the family, for us at the time, because it was being the wrong place, the wrong time type of thing. And I knew that absolutely. I trusted you 100%. But it was hard for me emotionally, of course, with the prospect that could have, what could have happened. And I remember asking Guruji for help. We had just met him. It was not that long. And I remember him saying to me, and I've never forgotten it, and I've always given this advice to everybody, which was, he said to me, I will help, but you must promise me one thing. Do not worry, because worry, blocks or interferes with positive energy coming in and, this kind of thing. If you worry, I can't help, he said. And I promised, I said, yes, I'll try my best, because it's not easy when it's a child.
I had the same issue. Yeah. He told me the same, not to worry.
And so I did my very best. I really did, not to worry. And he helped, and he did it all, sorted it. And so when you started coming regularly here, I was genuinely happy for you, that there was this opportunity for you. And even though you had the opportunity, for instance, to go into, a different path, and with you it was like, I felt that it could be either two things. Either you would go into a very sort of materialistic type of future, meaning you would probably work in finance and all this kind of thing, and you would be very successful. I had no doubt about that. Or you would go into a spiritual path, life, and so on, which is what you chose. And for me, whatever you chose, and that was fine, because as I said, I had the trust. So you had a university place, I remember, and you decided to stay here. Guruji said to you, "Oh, what are you going to learn at university? You can't learn here." And and so I remember some people asking me, "Oh, how do you feel about that? Don't you feel about?" I said no. Also because you were very young, and I felt, look, if people suddenly decide, whatever, 10, 20 years later, that they want to go to university, they can. It's not a big deal, and Yeah, I mean, what was he going to learn at university that he can't learn there, So, so I was happy, that you could come and then eventually you settled here. Of course, the only thing was that I didn't get to see you very much. Like I don't hardly ever see you, maybe once a year or something. And, and then, of course, Guruji sent us from here, then sent us to do specific things in Brazil. So we were there. So again, we didn't see him or you much. So that I would say was the only thing which really, not being able to see him and not being able. But he's always been amazing with all of us. It's very supportive.
It's also how everyone's had the freedom to do things in their own time, because we all met him at the same time.
Yeah.
But, for example, my older sister, I initiated her as a devotee.
Exactly.
So by that time, I was already a Swami.
Yes.
So by the time that she took initiation as a devotee, I had already been a devotee, been a brahmachari, not been a brahmachari, been a brahmachari, been a rishi, not been a rishi, been a swami.
Yes.
It was a long time.
Yes.
And I feel like both you, myself, the family, there was never any pressure on anybody to do anything. There was never any, even from Guruji. And Guruji was always very supportive and very open.
Yeah.
Patient.
Yeah. Very patient.
Yeah. But the fact is that we're all devotees.
All devotees, no?
I initiated both my sisters.
Yes, which was a great thing. And your brother-in-law, and
True.
and of course their two kids, and now, they were named straight away at birth by Guruji.
By Guruji, yeah.
They, the oldest one, who's 3, going to be 4 now, she's completely devoted to him now. It's interesting to watch these little kids. Kids. I see them here too. They're amazing because they all. She knows all the mantras. That we have to say, that we say. She knows them all by heart. She knows the names of all the deities.
They're not coming into this late.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice,
they're so much more advanced than we ever
externally.
were.
You can never know.
Of course. We never know internally.
But of course, No, it's cool.
Yeah.
Well, Mom, thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
This has been a different kind of episode. I think this is really, there was no real topic for us to discuss more than let's talk through, your life. I think it's something I wanted to do also because I'm sure you get this a lot, that you're Swami Revatikaanta's mother.
Oh, yes, most definitely.
And it's like, well, no, you're just Daya.
Yes.
And you happen to be my mother also.
Yes.
But you've had a much longer journey than I've had, and you've gone through a lot, and I have witnessed plenty of it, of course, firsthand, battling cancer, the situation with my father, moving all the time, different trials and tribulations that you've overcome, and to have raised the family that you did, and to be in the relationship with Guruji that you're in, and to do the service that you do. And all of it has been a wonderful story, a wonderful journey, a successful journey for sure. And I think it's important people hear that about you, because you're not just my mother, far, far from it, right? You're your own devotee on your own standing. And I'm very pleased that I'm able to have you on this platform and to listen to you.
Well, thank you very much for having me. And and I hope to, be able to continue to serve Guruji for as long as he wants, as long as he, that I'm able to. And it's been an amazing life. I couldn't have asked for anything more.
That's a nice, beautiful thought. Thank you, Mom.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. I've often said it to people, and it still is true. That day that we did go and meet Guruji together, of course, it changed my life. Of course, Guruji is my mother. He is my father.
Yes.
He is my best friend. He's all of those things these days. And it's been an interesting journey how the dynamics have changed over the years and everything. But it doesn't change, and it will never change the fact that you came home and said, hey, there's this guru there who wants to go see him.
Yeah.
And I don't underestimate that. I mean, divine providence and arrangement is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But
of course,
we should always be grateful, no, for the things that lead us to the life that we have and the life that we love and the life that we appreciate. Swami Karuna, you know, in her way, always has played her role in our life. And,
absolutely.
And you have played yours in mine. And we are where we are. And I'm incredibly grateful for everything.
Yeah, me too.
Thanks, Mom.
Thanks.
Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev.
Hope to have you again someday for another topic. Something not so much of a trip down memory lane.
Yes, for sure. Absolutely.
Okay.
I look forward to it. Jai Gurudev.
Thank you very much.